What if I told you there was an NBA player who never took his mask off? He was one of the best mid-range shooters and conditioned athletes of his generation. And with those skills, he managed to win the NBA championship and become a 3-time NBA All-Star. Meet the man behind the mask, Richard Hamilton. But what if I told you he almost never was? In order to figure out how Richard Hamilton became the masked man, we have to take it back to the beginning, where he was born in coastal Pennsylvania on February 14, 1978. Richard Hamilton's father, David Hamilton, was a former college basketball player, so it didn't take long for Richard Hamilton's father to instill basketball into him at the age of 7. As a kid, Richard Hamilton inherited his father's nickname, Rip. In fact, Rip's father earned the nickname by always ripping his diaper off as a baby. He also felt that superstars needed a nickname, so entering high school, Rip believed he was one of the best freshmen, but unfortunately, he wasn't as good as he thought, leading to him getting cut during varsity tryouts. However, Rip's natural skill and endurance earned him a spot on the high school track team without even training. He was so good, he outran every opponent. He won every race he ran in high school except one, when he miscalculated how many laps he had to go, so it didn't take long for Rip to use that unfair advantage to dominate the basketball court. As he moved to varsity his sophomore year, Rip's coach even said, if you're playing Rip, you needed track shoes. He never stopped and never tired. The way his heart and lungs work is a gift. Throughout Rip's high school career, he dominated, winning multiple championships and earning accolades. He was on pace to being the #1 player in Pennsylvania. That's until he found out about Kobe Bryant. The two faced off 3 times. In their first matchup, Kobe hit a buzzer beater 3, leaving Rip and his team devastated. Rip finished with 32 points and Kobe with 35. And in their second matchup, it was a close game, and Rip was a few inches from getting the best of Kobe until he fouled out. And just like that, his team collapsed, leaving Kobe victorious once again. But in their third and final matchup, Rip's career would take a shift for the better. See, Rip was dominant, but not many coaches showed heavy interest in him. So during Rip's matchup against Kobe, UConn's head coach Jim Calhoun showed up to the most talked about game in Pennsylvania. However, Rip took another loss to Kobe and only finished the game with 16 points compared to Kobe's 29. But this game is where Rip's basketball career would take off. After the game, Rip's coach spoke to UConn head coach Jim Calhoun. He stated he was very interested in Rip. Although Rip failed to win another state title, he will earn himself a spot on the UConn's men's basketball team. Throughout the next couple of years, Rip would crush college. In his freshman year, he had a total of 509 points, the most by a first-year player since UConn had joined the Big East, averaging 15.9 points per game. In Rip's sophomore year, he led UConn to a Big East tournament and regular season title. However, during March Madness, Rip would come up short, losing to the University of North Carolina and the Elite Eight, ending his chances of a national championship, even after he had a miracle shot in the Sweet 16. Rip finished the season averaging 21.5 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. But during the summer, Rip would experience some of the best times and worst times of his life. See, Rip was given the opportunity to play for Team USA. However, during the scrimmage, Rip broke his right foot and was injured for 7 weeks, his first major injury of his career. To make things worse, Rip's grandfather was extremely ill with lung cancer and would sadly pass away, completely shattering Rip's heart. This will lead to Rip watching film of his dad's old college highlights to help him find the love for the game again. In fact, this helped Rip develop a deeper understanding of his skills and how to utilize them. So, entering Rip's third season, moving without the ball became a Hamilton trademark, wrote UConn's Phil Chartist. As the season went on, Rip found his groove. He led UConn to a 34-2 record, averaging 23.5 points per game, and he made it to the national championship facing off against Duke. And when it mattered the most, Rip dominated, scoring 27 points with 7 rebounds and 3 assists, earning UConn their first ever national championship. In fact, UConn's blog writer said he was constantly in motion. Defenders withdrew the Hamilton assignment, knew they were in for a long night of running. Eventually, he was going to slip away. Inevitably, that was the moment he was going to be open for that deadly mid-range jumper. He made a championship career out of it, an NCAA championship career. Fueled by his recent success, Rip declared for the NBA draft. He was selected 7th overall by the Washington Wizards. Coming into the season, Rip was the backup shooting guard behind Mitch Richmond. Rip finished the season averaging 9 points per game. Entering Rip's second year, he was shifted to the small forward position, where he doubled his average, increasing it to 18.1 points per game. However, the Wizards only won 19 games throughout the whole season. So, with the struggling Wizards, Michael Jordan decided to step down as the Wizards' vice president of basketball operations, making his return to the NBA at the age of 38, as he saw the rising star Rip Hamilton needed a partner in crime. Luckily, this allowed Rip to go back to his natural position, which was the shooting guard. In fact, Rip and MJ revived the Wizards, establishing a franchise record of 9 wins in a row. However, on December 21st against the Orlando Magic, Rip would face an injury which was devastating for the Wizards. Wizards head coach said, Rip's whole game is speed and lateral quickness, so he's not a guy who could be effective at 70%. His whole premise is outrunning people, getting up and down the floor, getting the quick release jump shot. I'm hoping he's back soon. With Rip's arrival after the injury, he helped the Wizards take a massive leap compared to last year, leading them to a 37-45 record, a 19-game improvement, while averaging 20 points per game. Despite the improvement, the Wizards still weren't able to make the playoffs. See, even though Rip helped pump some oxygen into the Wizards, during the offseason, Rip's career would completely change. The Washington Wizards decided to trade him to the Detroit Pistons, along with Bobby Simmons and Hubert Davis in exchange for for Rocco Rotter, Brian Cardinale, and all-star scorer Jerry Stackhouse. In fact, during the 2002 offseason, the Pistons also traded for Chauncey Billups and drafted Tayshaun Prince, assembling a championship roster that featured the Defensive Player of the Year in Ben Wallace and the Sixth Man of the Year in Carlos Williamson. Rip was now plugged into a team desired to win, but on March 10, 2002, during a game against the Clippers, Rip would face a broken nose, causing him to miss 7 games. However, once Rip came back to the Pistons, they made it to the playoffs. In Rip's playoffs debut, he faced a huge mountain he had to climb. Rip and the Pistons were down 3-1 against Tracy McGrady and the Orlando Magic. However, Rip's lethal mid-range shooting and relentless moving helped organize a 3-1 comeback, winning the series in 7 games. The Pistons carried this momentum, defeating the Philadelphia 76ers in the conference semifinals and made it to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 1991, but they will ultimately fall short to the New Jersey Nets, losing 4-0. However, Rip made his mark with the team, averaging 22.5 points per game. So, with Rip's emergence, he signed a 7-year, $62 million contract extension. Despite Rip's newly signed contract, in the beginning of the season, Rip broke his nose. To make things even worse, right after Rip's recovery, he broke his nose again. So after a second injury, Rip had to make a life-changing decision: either wear a mask for the rest of his career to protect himself, or get face, nasal, reconstructive surgery, which could still lead to his career being cut short if he got hit in the nose again. And that's when the Masked Man was born. But what Rip didn't know at the time was that from that point on, he created a persona that fans will remember him by forever. The clear plastic mask will become his trademark for the rest of his career. However, it didn't start off great.
It felt difficult at first because it was hot, it was sweaty. I'm like, man, there's no way I'm taking this thing off. I want to throw it down. I want to break it.
It's hot, it's sweaty, yeah, we all know that, but the bottom line is you have to be comfortable with it, doesn't interfere with your play.
Despite their early struggles, Rip scored a career-high 44 points against the Cleveland Cavaliers. However, regardless of his success, the Pistons knew they were one piece short from completing the puzzle to potentially winning a championship. So in the 2003 draft, Joe Dumars drafted Darko Milicic in a draft that featured Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. But after seeing his first-round draft pick was looking like a bust, he made a trade for Rasheed Wallace, a man who was all about winning. So on a nightly basis, Rip would tighten the straps of his mask, calling it his Superman cape. But it wasn't until the playoffs that the legend of the mask grew. Throughout the playoffs, the Pistons took on the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round, where they easily handled them 4-2. And the next matchup against the New Jersey Nets, they got their sweet revenge, defeating them in 7. So in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pacers, in Game 1, Rip sapped around screens, darting for easy buckets, draining defenders. Rip finished the game with 33 points. In fact, after the game, Pacers shooting guard Reggie Miller admitted that he could not handle Hamilton because he was moving all the time. And faced with a new defender, who was the Defensive Player of the Year and Ron Artest, Rip turned the Jets on once again. With endless movement and mid-range jumpers, he finished the game with 21 points on 7-15 shooting, while Ron Artest was worn out, helping the Pistons win the Eastern Conference Finals. So Rip's next matchup for the NBA championship, there was only one man standing in his way: his lifelong rival Kobe Bryant, who crushed Rip's chances of winning a state title in high school. Rip and the Pistons were the underdog against the Los Angeles Lakers, who had the dynamic duo of Shaq and Kobe. The Pistons took Game 1 thanks to their supporting cast despite Rip's struggles. In Game 2, the Lakers struck back on the Pistons floor, capturing victory. The stage was set for Game 3. Rip timed his mask, his focus unshakable, and his Superman cape on. What followed was a masterclass. He exploited the Lakers. His sharp cuts, track running endurance led to a 31-point outburst. Rip and the Pistons captured a 20-point victory. He never stops. He's like a little Energizer bunny, said Lakers forward Devin George. So fueled by his recent success, Rip and the Pistons took Game 4, putting them one win away from a championship. And for the first time in Rip's career, he had a chance to beat Kobe in something meaningful. And with more confidence than ever, Rip performed. During the closing minutes of the game, Rip delivered a dagger, a mid-range jump shot that sealed the game and the championship, lifting the Pistons to their first NBA title since 1990, leaving Kobe in disbelief. It still eats at me, absolutely does. And I'm upset that I gave Richard Hamilton something to brag about, because up until that point, he never beat me, and that just kills me. Rip finished the series averaging 21.5 points per game, and his unbearable movement earned him the nickname Running Man and Never Still. So entering next season with a boost of confidence, Rip dominated. However, on January 6, 2005, Rip did something no one could have ever imagined. During a matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies, Rip finished with 14 points. But here's where things get interesting. He went 0-10 from the field, and all 14 of his points came from the free throw line while leading his team in scoring, becoming the only player in the NBA history to lead his team in scoring in a game despite not making a single field goal. Throughout the season, the Pistons dominated. They were second in the East and managed to get back to the finals once again, with hopes of winning back-to-back championships. However, during Game 6 in a winner-go-home situation, Rip did something that left many fans puzzled. During the offensive play, Bruce Bowen of the San Antonio Spurs smacked Rip's mask off, leaving Rip in frustration as his mask was damaged, causing Rip to have two options: either sit out the game and wait for his mask to get fixed, or stay in the game and risk his career being ended after one hit. So as a true competitor, Rip decided to play maskless and poured in 23 points, helping the Pistons win Game 6. Unfortunately, the Pistons will lose in Game 7 to the Spurs, as there was no answer for Tim Duncan and his dominance. In the following season, Rip established himself as the Pistons' go-to scorer. He was a master at moving without the ball, figuring out ways to free himself for open shots. Rip's teammate Chauncey Billups even said he's got some kind of sickness because he never gets tired. I don't understand it. It's crazy. He's a freak of nature. Rip and his star point guard Chauncey Billups were known as the backcourt of the future, becoming the backbone of the Pistons' success. And just like that, Rip made his first All-Star game. But see, Rip's All-Star year started years before with a conversation with Michael Jordan during his Washington years, where Rip asked MJ for a sneaker endorsement, but was denied, with MJ saying, "Hey Rip, my sneakers are for all-stars. You just had to have thick skin with him, Rip said. See, Jordan harsh words motivated Rip to make the all-star team. So at Rip's all-star selection, he told MJ, "Hey M, now I'm an all-star. Now you got to put me in those sneakers, and now you got to pay me the big bucks." And just like that, Rip landed a Jordan brand endorsement deal. Throughout the season, Rip continued to be dominant. He led the Pistons to the #1 seed and a franchise record of 64 wins and averaged a career high 20 points per game. Even though he was a mid-range shooter, he led the league in three-point percentage with 46.8%. Entering the postseason, Rip crushed his opponents. Well, that was until he faced the Miami Heat by Shaq and Dwayne Wade. Rip tried everything with non-stop movement, frustrating Dwayne Wade. "I hated guarding Rip. I hated guarding Ray. Just guys like that. You know, move that constantly," he said. But that Heat team was too strong, and they went on to take the series in 6, getting their revenge on the Pistons. Rip finished the season averaging 20.4 points per game. So with another failed attempt at a championship, Rip entered the season dominating with a 51-point outburst against the Knicks, becoming the first opposing player since MJ to score over 50 points in Madison Square Garden. Just like the previous year, Rip was once again named an All-Star. However, the Pistons won less games compared to last year with only 53 and would get eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals by LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. In the following season, Rip was once again named an All-Star. However, his production declined as he only averaged 17.3 points per game, and the Pistons weren't able to even win 59 games. And just like the past, the Pistons lost in the Eastern Conference Finals again. To make things worse, 2 games into the following season, Rip's partner in crime, Chauncey Billups, was traded for Allen Iverson, who was currently on the decline. So it didn't take long for Rip to express his frustration. Despite the frustration, Rip signed a 3-year, $34 million contract extension to remain in Detroit. Rip's production increased as he averaged 18.3 points. However, it was obvious the new duo of Rip and Allen Iverson just didn't blend. So the Pistons ended up posting their first losing record with Rip Hamilton on the team. They managed to grab onto the 8th seed, but were swept in the first round. Shortly after, Allen Iverson made his departure from the Pistons. Throughout the next couple of years, Rip would experience some of the worst times of his career. During the 2010-2011 season, things got ugly during practice, and Rip and his head coach got into a heated argument, resulting in Rip being benched for more than 6 weeks. Rip only played 20 total minutes and received a did not play coach's decision. Rip still managed to average 14.1 points per game. Luckily, the Pistons ended up firing their head coach. Despite the firing, Rip's contract was bought out by the Pistons in December 2011, making him an unrestricted free agent. And the following year, he signed a 3-year, $15 million contract with the Chicago Bulls. However, his production was lower than usual, only averaging 11.6 points per game, and only played 28 games during the season due to injury. Luckily, the Bulls made it to the playoffs, but they lost their star point guard and Derrick Rose due to a torn ACL in the first game of the playoffs and were defeated in 6 games by the 8-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. And Rip's next season with the Bulls, he only averaged 9.8 points per game. The Bulls managed to reach the second round in the playoffs, but were eliminated by the Miami Heat. The Bulls declined their option on Rip's contract on July 10th, 2013, making him a free agent. And on February 26, 2015, Rip Hamilton officially retired from the NBA. With his 3 All-Star appearances and NBA championship, he was the most iconic person to wear a mask. As he tied his straps and dashed all around the court, Rip Hamilton gave us some of the most memorable moments in his 14-year career. He was a gem in his era, being one of the last deadly mid-range shooters. But one thing Rip knew for sure was,
If I'm running a 48-minute game and I get tired, I know the person that's chasing me is exhausted.